They laughed while my daughter froze outside. That's the image that will never leave me, the Whitlocks, toasting with champagne beside the fire, while Emily sat trembling on the porch at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. It was Christmas Eve. And that night, something inside me broke forever. The taxi stopped in front of my daughter's house, its headlights carving through the thick Idaho snow. My boots sank deep as I stepped out, dragging my old suitcase behind me. The cold slapped my face like it wanted to peel the skin right off. After decades of taekwondo tournaments, I thought I'd endured every kind of pain. But that cold, that silence, it bit straight to the bone. I stood at the gate, staring at the warm yellow light glowing through the living room window. For a moment, my heart lifted. I'd planned this surprise for weeks. To show up unannounced, to see Emily's eyes light up the way they used to when she was little and I'd come home from training. I imagined her running into my arms, laughing. But the yard was untouched. No footprints. No sound but the wind pushing snow across the frozen lawn. I walked closer, peeking through the window. Inside, the Whitlocks were gathered around a long red tablecloth covered in food, turkey, stuffing, cranberry salad, steaming dishes that filled the air with warmth. Ryan, my son-in-law, was pouring wine for his father, Harold, who sat at the head of the table like a king. Evelyn, his wife, smiled that tight, fake smile of hers. And there was Abigail, Ryan's sister, clinking glasses, her children giggling nearby. A perfect Christmas. Perfect, except for the one person missing. My daughter. I scanned the room again, searching for her face. I didn't see her anywhere. My smile faltered. Where was she? Then I heard it, a sound so faint it barely reached me through the wind. A whimper. I turned toward the porch. And there she was. Emily was curled up on a wooden chair, her body trembling violently. Her blouse was thin, soaked through with melted snow. Her hair stuck to her forehead. Her lips were pale, almost blue. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Emily. I ran, my boots slipping in the snow. I yanked off my thick coaching jacket and wrapped it around her shaking shoulders. Her skin was so cold it burned my hands. Mom, she whispered, her voice faint, fragile, like the word itself might shatter. I'm here, sweetheart, I said, choking on my tears. I've got you. You're safe. But she collapsed into my arms, too weak to hold herself up. I could feel her heartbeat fluttering like a trapped bird. Inside, the laughter continued, muffled but sharp, cruel in its contrast. They were toasting, celebrating. My daughter was freezing to death outside their door. Something inside me snapped. I lifted Emily into my arms and walked straight to the front steps. My blood was boiling so hot I barely felt the cold anymore. I pounded on the door. Once. Twice. 3 times. The music, Jingle Bells, Emily's childhood favorite, kept playing. Mocking. No one answered. I kicked the door. Hard. It swung open. Evelyn Whitlock stood there, a glass of wine dangling in her hand, her red lips curving into a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. Well, look who decided to show up, she said. Her tone dripped with false sweetness. Merry Christmas, Rose. You could have called. We might have, prepared. Prepared? I hissed, stepping closer. If I'd called, I wouldn't have caught this. What did you do to my daughter? Evelyn's gaze flicked to Emily, limp in my arms. Oh, Emily, she said, feigning innocence. She just needed some fresh air. We told her to come in, but you know how emotional she gets. Fresh air. In 32 degrees. I clenched my jaw. You're lying. Before she could answer, Ryan appeared behind her, his shirt unbuttoned, a half-empty bottle of wine dangling from his fingers. "Mom," he said, "close the door. Let her stay out there till she calms down." His eyes met mine, defiant, arrogant. "She came out here crying again, saying we don't love her. Always the drama." Behind him, I heard laughter, Abigail's sharp, cruel voice. "Yeah, a wife who can't even have kids, crying over nothing. Poor thing." Another voice, Harold's deep and cold. "4 miscarriages. Maybe that's a sign." Their laughter hit me harder than any punch I'd ever taken. I stepped forward, my voice trembling with fury. "You monsters." Ryan scoffed, taking another drink. "She's been faking depression for years, Rose. Locking herself in her room, refusing to work. My parents have done more for her than you ever did." I froze, staring at him, this man my daughter had loved, defended, built a life with. "Is that what you call love?" I said quietly. "Leaving her out to freeze." He shrugged. "She's lucky we put up with her at all." Emily stirred in my arms, her voice barely audible. "Mom, please." Her eyes fluttered open, glassy with tears. "I'm so tired." Her words shattered me. Before I could answer, Ryan snapped, "Shut up, Emily. You've embarrassed me enough tonight." That was it. I lowered Emily gently onto the couch, just inside the doorway. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, disgust, annoyance, even amusement. I looked around at that polished room, the crystal glasses, the golden turkey, the expensive rug. All of it built on cruelty. Harold rose from his seat, his voice booming. "That's enough, Ms. Rose. This is a family matter. A woman who can't give her husband children must learn to accept her place. That's the natural order." Natural order. I turned to him, my blood roaring in my ears. "You sit there eating while my daughter freezes outside, and you dare talk about order." Evelyn sipped her wine and sneered. "A woman who can't have kids is just incomplete. It's sad, really." Abigail laughed. "She uses her depression to get attention. Always whining, always weak. If she can't handle life, that's her problem." The room buzzed with cruel agreement. I could see it in their eyes, they truly believed it. Emily's faint whisper broke the noise. "No one understands." Ryan turned on her. "Enough," he shouted. "You're pathetic." And that was when something inside me, something maternal, primal, unstoppable, took over. I stood tall, staring straight at Ryan. My voice came out low but deadly steady. "You think this is your house? You think you can treat her like trash, because she's gentle, because she's hurting?" He smirked, but there was fear in his eyes. "You don't get to tell me how to handle my wife." "Your wife," I repeated. "My daughter." Then I pointed at the whole room. "All of you, you're going to pay for what you did to her." Silence fell like snow. Ryan tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. "You're making a scene." "No," I said. "I'm calling it what it is, abuse." That word hung in the air like a curse. Evelyn's smile vanished. Harold's jaw tightened. Abigail stopped laughing. I took my phone from my coat pocket, my hand steady now. "This ends tonight. The police will hear everything." Ryan stepped forward, eyes wild. "You wouldn't dare." I met his gaze. "Watch me." The bottle slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. Red wine splashed across the white carpet, a crimson stain spreading like guilt. Outside, through the window, I saw movement. A figure in uniform. Jake. My former student, now a police officer, standing silently on the porch, watching. I gave him a nod. Ryan didn't notice, he was too busy panicking. "This is my house," he shouted again, desperate now. "Not anymore," I said. "It's a crime scene." The room erupted in shouts, Evelyn demanding I stop, Harold barking orders, Abigail crying that I was ruining Christmas. But I didn't hear them. All I could hear was Emily's soft breathing, the faint whisper of her voice. "Mom," she murmured, her eyes half closed. "Thank you." I brushed her hair back gently. "Rest, sweetheart. I've got you now." Then I looked up at the stunned faces around me and said 6 words, words that would change everything. "You'll regret every tear," she cried. The room was chaos. Evelyn's shrill voice cut through the air, "You're insane, Rose. Calling the police on your own family. On Christmas Eve." Ryan stood in front of her like a shield, jaw clenched, red-faced. Harold pounded his fist on the table. "No one's calling anyone," he thundered. "This is our home." But then the door opened again. Snow blew in, and behind it, the steady, calm voice of law. "Actually," said Jake, stepping inside, "this is now a police matter." His uniform looked impossibly clean against the backdrop of their messy dinner party. The badge on his chest gleamed under the chandelier. He scanned the room, then his eyes found mine. A small nod. He understood. Ryan froze, his face turning pale as the wine stain spreading beneath his feet. "What the hell is this?" Jake ignored him and walked straight to me. "Ms. Rose, you okay?" I nodded, holding Emily closer. She was half conscious, her skin clammy, breathing shallow. "She needs medical help," Jake said softly, already pulling out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 719, requesting immediate medical response at Meadow Creek, 12th Street. Possible hypothermia." The Whitlocks erupted again. Evelyn lunged forward, her words slurring slightly from the wine. "She's fine. She wanted to sit outside. This is a misunderstanding." Jake turned to her, his calmness sharp as steel. Step back. You let a woman sit outside in freezing temperatures, while you were drinking wine by the fire. That's not a misunderstanding. That's neglect." Harold's booming voice filled the room again. "You have no right." Jake cut him off. "Sir, I'm the law here tonight. Sit down." For the first time, Harold obeyed. He sank back into his chair, his face red with fury. I could hear sirens in the distance. Emily stirred, her voice weak. "Mom." I knelt beside her, brushing hair from her forehead. "Sure, baby. The ambulance is coming." Her lips trembled. "I'm sorry." "For what?" My throat tightened. "For ruining Christmas." The words stabbed me straight through the heart. "You didn't ruin anything," I whispered fiercely. "You survived them." The paramedics arrived minutes later, their bright jackets bringing warmth and authority into the cold house. They lifted Emily onto a stretcher, covering her with heated blankets. I followed them to the door, refusing to let go of her hand. "Where are you taking her?" I asked. "St. Luke's Medical Center," one of them said. "Her body temperature's dangerously low, but she's stable. You can ride with us." Behind me, Ryan's voice echoed. "You can't take her. She's fine." Jake turned, his patience finally gone. "One more word, Mr. Whitlock, and you'll be spending Christmas in a holding cell." Ryan's mouth snapped shut. I gave Jake a grateful look as I followed the paramedics out. Snowflakes swirled under the flashing red and blue lights. The house behind me, once warm and glowing, now looked cold, hollow. The sound of Silent Night still played faintly from inside, warped and eerie, like the ghost of what that night should have been. At the hospital, I sat beside Emily's bed, watching the color slowly return to her cheeks. Machines beeped quietly, marking each fragile breath. I held her hand tight, afraid that if I let go, she might disappear again. When she finally opened her eyes fully, I smiled through my tears. "Hey, sweetheart." She blinked, disoriented. Where am I?" "Safe," I said simply. "You're safe now." Tears filled her eyes. "They hate me, Mom. I tried so hard to make them love me, but..." I stopped her gently. "You don't have to make monsters love you." She shook her head weakly. "I didn't want you to see me like this." "Oh, Emily," I whispered, stroking her hair. "You've always been stronger than you think. But now, it's my turn." She frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "I'm going to make sure they never hurt you again." Her eyes widened. "Mom, no." I smiled, but it wasn't the soft, comforting smile she remembered from childhood. It was sharper, colder. "Yes, sweetheart. It's time they learned what happens when they underestimate a mother." 2 hours later, as Emily slept, Jake walked into the hospital room. He took off his hat, looking uneasy. "Ms. Rose," he said quietly, "I filed the report. But it won't be easy." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He sighed. "The Whitlocks are powerful. Harold used to be a judge. He's got friends in the city council, the police board. They'll try to sweep this under the rug, say it was just a family argument." I leaned back in the chair, my jaw tightening. "Then we'll make sure it doesn't get swept anywhere." Jake hesitated. "You always were stubborn, Ms. Rose." "Call it what you want," I said. "I call it love." He smiled faintly. "You haven't changed." But I had, more than he knew. As he left, I stared at Emily's sleeping face, remembering every scar life had given her. 4 miscarriages. Years of emotional abuse. And now, the humiliation of being left outside like trash. No more. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, the kind that burned clean. The next morning, I walked into the police station, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. The air smelled of coffee and disinfectant. Jake met me at the door. "You sure you're ready for this?" he asked. "I've been ready since the moment I saw her in the snow." He led me to an interview room where a young officer sat with a clipboard. "We'll need your statement," she said kindly. I told them everything. Every word I'd heard through that door. Every insult. Every cruel laugh. I described the way Emily's body had felt in my arms, limp, ice-cold, lifeless. By the time I finished, the officer's eyes were glassy. She wrote something down and said softly, "We'll start with charges for neglect and domestic abuse." But what? Without visible physical injuries, it might be hard to prove. I leaned forward. "Then I'll get you proof." She blinked. "How?" I smiled faintly. "You'll see." That night, after checking on Emily again, I went back to the house. The street was empty, blanketed in fresh snow. The Whitlocks' lights were off, except for the faint glow of the fireplace flickering through the window. I moved quietly, every step deliberate. I wasn't there to fight. I was there to see. Through the window, I saw Ryan pacing the living room, shouting into his phone. Evelyn sat on the couch, her head in her hands, sobbing dramatically. Harold stood by the mantel, his voice low but furious. "Media's already sniffing around," he said. "If this story gets out, we're finished." I pulled out my phone, recording everything through the crack in the window. "Dad, she's exaggerating." Ryan barked. "She's crazy, Just like Emily. We didn't do anything wrong. Evelyn looked up, her voice trembling. You told her to stay outside, Ryan. You did. I didn't mean it literally, he snapped. You think I wanted the cops here on Christmas Eve? Harold turned sharply. Shut up, both of you. We'll fix this. We always do. I zoomed in, my heart pounding. Every word was another nail in their coffin. Then Abigail's voice came from upstairs, shouting, the news called. Someone posted about it online. People are saying we tried to kill her. My phone trembled in my hand. Online. Someone had already leaked it. And that's when I realized I wasn't the only one seeking justice. Back at the hospital, I found Emily awake, scrolling through her phone. Her voice was shaky, but a spark of fire lit her eyes. Mom, someone posted the story. A neighbor filmed everything. The cops, the ambulance, all of it. My chest tightened. Good. She smiled weakly. The comments, people are furious. Everyone's defending me. I took her hand gently. Let them. The world's finally seeing the truth. Emily looked at me, her voice small but firm. What are you going to do now? I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Now? I said. Now I make sure no one ever forgets what they did to you. Not the law. Not their friends. Not a single person in this town. Her eyes widened. Mom. I squeezed her hand. Rest, sweetheart. Let me handle the rest. Outside the hospital window, the first light of morning touched the snow. It glittered, clean, quiet, unmerciful. Perfect for revenge. By the time dawn broke over Boise, the city was covered in white silence. But inside me, there was only fire. Emily slept peacefully for the first time in months, her face soft in the morning light. The 4-line ran down her arm, the monitor beeped gently beside her. I brushed her hair away from her forehead and whispered, they won't get away with this, sweetheart. Not one of them. As I stepped out of the hospital room, I felt that strange calm that comes after a storm, the kind where destruction still lingers, but something new is about to begin. In the hallway, Jake was waiting, holding 2 coffees. You didn't sleep, did you? He asked. I didn't need to, I replied. I was planning. He sighed, handing me the cup. Planning what exactly? Justice, I said simply. Jake frowned. I filed the report. The DA will look into it. But you know how this works, Rose. They're rich, they'll hire lawyers, they'll make it look like you're exaggerating. I took a long sip of coffee. Then we'll make sure no one believes their story. He raised an eyebrow. You're not thinking of doing something crazy, are you? I met his eyes, calm but sharp. Jake, I've spent my life teaching people how to stand their ground. This isn't crazy. It's self-defense. 3 days later, Emily was discharged from the hospital with strict orders to rest. Her color had returned, though her smile was still faint, the kind of smile you give when you want your mother to stop worrying. We drove to my small apartment downtown. I hadn't lived there full-time in years, but it was still mine, quiet, simple, with a view of the snowy street. Emily sank onto the couch, wrapped in a blanket I'd bought her when she was little. The one with stars on it. Mom, she whispered, you don't have to fight them. It's not worth it. I crouched in front of her, taking her cold hands in mine. They made you believe you were worthless, Emily. They broke you down until you thought freezing outside was something you deserved. I won't let that stand. Tears filled her eyes. But you'll get hurt. I smiled sadly. I've been hurt before. I survived. And this time, I'm the one holding the sword. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and a laptop. The quiet hum of the heater was the only sound. I wrote 3 names in bold at the top of the page: Harold, Evelyn, Ryan. Then I began my plan. I wasn't going to punch them, though the thought was tempting. I wasn't going to break the law. No, I was going to break their illusion. The Whitlocks had one weakness: reputation. For years, they'd built their image as the perfect family. Harold, the retired judge who donated to charities. Evelyn, the polished socialite hosting fundraisers. Ryan, the successful real estate agent posting pictures of champagne dinners online. They lived for appearances. So I'd destroy them with the truth. It started with the video. Jake had sent me the footage from his body cam, the moment he walked into that house, the chaos, the cold, the truth. It wasn't the entire story, but it was enough. I clipped just the part where Evelyn said, she just wanted some fresh air. And Harold's voice booming, a woman who can't bear children needs to learn her place. I uploaded it anonymously. Title: Christmas Eve in Boise, the truth behind the perfect family. Within hours, it exploded. Comments poured in like wildfire. Who leaves a woman in the cold like that? These people belong in prison. That poor daughter-in-law. I hope she's okay. By the next morning, local news picked it up. Boise Gazette. Abuse allegations against former Judge Harold Whitlock. His photo, smug, smiling, was plastered across every feed. The Whitlocks tried to deny everything, of course. Ryan posted, "My wife is mentally unstable. Please respect our privacy." That post backfired spectacularly. Thousands of people flooded his comments with fury. So she's unstable, because she nearly froze to death. Gaslighting much, Ryan. You're done, man. I didn't need to lift a finger. The world was doing my work for me. But I wasn't done. The second step was quieter, personal. I called an old acquaintance, Linda, a journalist I'd once trained with years ago, back when she was struggling and I'd helped her get back on her feet. She owed me one. "Linda," I said, "how would you like an exclusive story about a respected family with a dark secret?" There was a pause, then her tone sharpened. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." Within a day, Linda had arranged interviews, anonymous ones, at first. She asked questions I'd been waiting years to hear. How long had Emily been mistreated? How did the Whitlocks keep it hidden? I told her everything. Not exaggerations. Just truth, the kind that cuts deeper because it's real. When the article came out, it wasn't just news. It was a storm. Behind closed doors, the hidden cruelty of the Whitlock family. Harold's past rulings were questioned. Evelyn's charities distanced themselves. Ryan's business partners dropped him overnight. By day 3, they were pariahs. On the 4th night, my phone rang. Unknown number. Rose. Ryan's voice, hoarse, shaking. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to hear the desperation. "You have to stop this," he said. "You're ruining my life." I let out a soft, bitter laugh. "Your life? You left my daughter outside in the cold, Ryan. You almost killed her." "It wasn't like that. She was acting crazy, I just..." "Save it," I cut him off. "You want forgiveness? Ask the people watching your downfall." He tried again. "Please. I'll apologize. I hung up. Then I turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I slept like a baby. The following week, Jake came by my apartment, holding a copy of the Gazette. You've caused quite a storm, he said, though there was a hint of admiration in his tone. Good, I said. Storms clean the air. He sat down across from me. You know, Harold's filed a complaint against the police. He's claiming the video was taken illegally. I smirked. He can try. Jake leaned back, studying me. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I thought about it. No. I'm relieved. I spent years believing that being silent was noble. That patience was strength. But now I know, silence only feeds monsters. He nodded slowly. Emily's lucky to have you. I looked out the window, snowflakes drifting past the glass. She shouldn't need luck. She should have safety. A few days later, Emily found the courage to speak publicly. She recorded a short video, her voice trembling but strong. My name is Emily Rose Whitlock, she said. I'm sharing this because silence almost killed me. I stood behind the camera, tears in my eyes, as she told her truth, not about revenge, not about hatred, but about surviving. By that night, her video had been viewed 1 million times. People were sending her messages from everywhere, mothers, daughters, women who had suffered the same kind of quiet cruelty. And Emily smiled, a real smile this time. Mom, she said softly, I think I can breathe again. I hugged her tight. Good, I whispered. Because this is just the beginning. But even as Emily began to heal, I knew something else was coming. Because men like Harold Whitlock don't just fall, they strike back. And one cold evening, as the snow thickened again, a black car stopped in front of my apartment building. I watched from the window as a tall figure stepped out, his silhouette sharp against the white. He looked up, straight toward my window. My phone buzzed with a message. Unknown number, you've made a powerful enemy, Rose. Watch yourself. I stared at the screen, my pulse steady. Then I smiled. Because they still didn't understand. They thought I was some grieving mother seeking pity. They hadn't realized yet. I was just getting started. They hit first with lawyers and lies. I'd expected legal threats, men with polished shoes and practiced voices, but nothing could have prepared me for the coldness of their chosen battlefield, my reputation. They wanted to make me small again. 3 days after the car outside my building, the Whitlocks' retaliation began in earnest. An official-looking envelope arrived at my door, a cease and desist letter from a high-powered law firm in Boise. The type was sharp, the language thinner than ice. Remove all videos and posts. Retract your statements. Or face litigation for defamation. I read it once. Twice. It felt like a punch to the throat. Their lawyer used words like reckless, malicious intent, and irreparable harm. The letter demanded $250,000 in damages. The implication was clear: keep making noise, and we'll bankrupt you. For a moment I sat down hard on the kitchen chair and laughed, loud, incredulous. Me, bankrupt? The woman who'd lived quietly for years to keep her dignity intact. Their threats were designed to terrify me, to make me stop. To go back into silence. They underestimated the wrong person. I called Carlos, the accountant I trusted years ago, the man who helped me balance ledgers, while hiding little comforts from myself, so my money would outlast my fears. They are trying to scare us with money, I told him. Can they actually do this? Carlos was practical, the type who could turn panic into spreadsheets. They can file, he said. But you have evidence. Videos. Witnesses. You can defend this. And even if they try to drag you into court, a public suit will expose them, which, well, it might be worse for them than for you. I told him what Jake had said about Harold's connections. He nodded slowly. Then let's make sure every single fact is airtight. If they push, you push harder, with paper, with witnesses, with law. They did push. Within 2 days, my phone buzzed constantly. Automated calls, a concerned neighbor claiming I'd vandalized their property. A local blog ran a smear piece accusing me of staging the entire episode for attention. Someone hacked into Emily's old social accounts and posted messages that made her look unstable. The Whitlocks' friends began whispering in church circles, unreliable, dramatic, unstable, the old playbook. And then came the whisper campaign, rumors that I'd been violent in the past, that my taekwondo years had made me too aggressive, a dangerous influence. The town's gossip mill sputtered and coughed like a furnace someone had fed coal into all night. There were letters to the editor, anonymous flyers in mailboxes, and a sudden spike of cold stares when I walked down Main. Jake brought me evidence like a soldier bringing news from the front. "They are buying public opinion," he said. "They are seeding narratives to sway the DA and the county board. If people think you're unstable, your case gets buried. You think they'll try to declare me the aggressive one?" I asked. "They'll try everything." He set a packet of papers on my table, screenshots, dates, witness statements that the police had already collected. "But we've got something they don't, the truth, and a community that believes in Emily." That afternoon, Emily and I started cold calling people, friends, neighbors, anyone who had seen or known the Whitlocks' real face. Not everyone answered. Some were afraid. But others came forward. The mail carrier, who'd noticed how often Emily went out wrapped in layers. The landscaper, who'd seen Ryan slam the back door after Emily stepped outside. Mrs. Latham from Unit 3 who confessed she'd once heard Evelyn say, "We can always get rid of her." Each voice was a small lamp in the dark. We compiled statements, sworn affidavits. Jake helped file them with the police and the DA's office. I had never been so grateful for small-town honesty. But the Whitlocks weren't only attacking reputations. They struck at our leverage. Late one night, a courier from Ryan's firm delivered a demand: vacate the Whitlock guest suite within 24 hours. It turned out Ryan had a rental agreement where Emily had sometimes stayed. Now they wanted her out. "Mom," she said, panic in her voice for the first time since the porch, "they're trying to make me homeless." She had reason to trust her home there, now she had nowhere. I tightened my jaw. That was the point when I stopped being reactive. No more picking up the pieces. It was time to take the initiative. I called Linda, the journalist I'd helped. She was ready, quick, hungry, precise. We arranged a recorded interview in a small cafe, away from the hum of the city. I told Linda everything, every bruise on Emily's heart, every whispered, "You're dramatic," that had been used to erase her. I let Linda record the interview in full so there would be no wiggle room for lawyers to claim fabrication. 2 days later, the Gazette ran a follow-up, a full-length piece titled, "When Power Protects Cruelty, The Whitlock Files." It exposed more than the porch scene. It named names, documented a pattern of petty cruelties escalating into systemic neglect. It quoted neighbors, charity coordinators, who'd once praised Evelyn now distancing themselves, and community volunteers, who'd once been eager to have the Whitlocks as donors now demanding explanations. The article changed the air in Boise. The tone flipped. People who had once seen me as a drama queen now saw a mother carrying the burden of proof. Comments flooded with outrage. Gone were the smug posts about family arguments. Now the conversation focused on the safety of victims, the arrogance of the privileged. But the Whitlocks hit back with money and muscle. They hired a lawyer whose name I recognized from television, the kind who spoke in measured cadences, and wore suits like armor. The man filed motions, subpoenas, and a defamation suit that aimed to freeze our resources and bury our momentum. He demanded that Linda reveal her source. He subpoenaed my financial records, seeking anything to discredit me. He dug up old municipal meeting minutes, where I'd once complained about a night noise dispute and presented it as volatile behavior. We pushed back. Dr. Patel, the psychiatrist who'd treated Emily during her darkest months, signed a statement verifying Emily's condition, clinical depression and trauma from repeated loss, not attention-seeking. Old photos of me coaching in tournaments, where I taught discipline, restraint, and respect, were submitted to show my character. Carlos compiled years of financial statements proving my prudence. Every paper became a sword or a shield. The DA, a cautious man named Reynolds, called me into his office. He'd been slow at first, worried about making a high-profile case against a retired judge. But the evidence, the video, the statements, the mounting public pressure, shifted the calculus. "We can't ignore an accusation like this if we have corroboration," he told me. "You and your daughter have given us more than enough to open a preliminary investigation." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "I want more than investigation," I said. "I want them held accountable." He studied me, a faint respect in his eyes. "We proceed carefully. Their lawyer will try to poke holes. We'll build a file: neglect, emotional abuse, endangerment. If we can establish a pattern, we have a case." As the legal gears turned, the Whitlocks grew desperate. Their friends began distancing themselves publicly. Invitations were cancelled, fundraising committees denied Evelyn's presence. Harold's appointment as a board advisor was put on hold. The social stain grew. At the same time, a new threat emerged. Someone started sending anonymous packets of personal information, bank records, private photos, to my email. My hands shook as I opened one. The content was intimate and invasive: snapshots of my youth, document scans from decades ago, personal notes I had written to Robert in his last year. The message attached: "We can publish things that hurt you, too." They were trying to weaponize my past. To make me flinch. I took the printouts to Carlos. He put them under a lamp, his brow furrowing. "This is petty," he said. "They are trying to scare you. But these are old, public registrable things. They can't change the facts. They can only muddy the water." Then Jake did something I hadn't expected. He organized a community meeting at the local church, not about lawsuits, but about safety. The hall filled: teachers, mothers, old students of mine, neighbors, and dozens of people who'd been moved by Emily's story. One by one they stood and told how the Whitlocks' behavior had made them uncomfortable over the years. The congregation listened, stunned. The pastor, a careful man, surprised me by stating bluntly, "No one is above compassion. We must protect the vulnerable." That night, I realized the real battle wasn't only in courtrooms or newspapers. It was in the hearts of people. But even as support grew, the Whitlocks' lawyer filed a temporary restraining order against us, to prevent us from posting or speaking about the case publicly. Our social media accounts that had hosted the video were taken down under threat of legal action. The momentum slowed like a tide being pulled back. I sat on my couch and watched the blank screen. The silence felt heavy. For a second, the old fear crept in: maybe I'd gone too far. Maybe the law would bend for them. Maybe Emily would suffer more. Then Emily reached out and took my hand. "Mom," she said, voice small but steady, "you started this to protect me. Don't stop, because they threaten us. We know the truth." Her courage steadied me. I called Linda and told her we were ready to fight the restraining order. She responded with that fierce, precise anger journalists have when truth is at risk. "We'll appeal," she said. "And I'll republish through my contacts. There are ways around temporary blocks." We moved like a chess player whose opponent believed their rooks could bulldoze. For every move they made to silence us, we had an answer: private donations to cover legal fees, witness protection arrangements, encrypted backups of every file. I slept in 2-hour slugs and woke ready again. On a wet morning that smelled like rain and resolution, the judge heard arguments for the restraining order. The courtroom was crowded: cameras, reporters, the Whitlock's lawyer in his armor, and us, smaller, real, and furious in our truth. The judge listened to the motion, read the evidence, watched the video clip on the court system. When he denied the restraining order, citing free speech and the public interest, the room exhaled. It felt like being given the right to breathe. The Whitlock's lawyer left furious, the news cameras buzzed with new stories, and the DA's office quietly prepared for a deeper inquiry. We had won a small battle. Not the war. Not yet. That evening, as snow began to fall again, Emily sat by my window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the world turn cold white outside. She smiled, genuine for the first time in weeks. "You did good, Mom," she said. I looked at her and realized something. Revenge had never been enough for me. Justice, yes. Protection, certainly. But the deeper thing I wanted was repair, for my daughter, for the town, for myself. To show Emily she was loved, not shameful. To show the Whitlocks that cruelty has a price. The storm would continue, they would come back with other moves. But now we had proof, allies, and a town that was awake. Their foundations had cracks, and I intended to widen them until they could no longer deny the damage they'd done. As night fell, an unexpected text arrived. "Unknown, you've made powerful enemies, Rose." Then a second message, from a number I recognized: "Jake, we've got a surprise for them tomorrow. Be ready." I smiled, feeling the muscles in my shoulders loosen for the first time in weeks. The game was far from over. But for the first time since I found Emily on the porch, I believed we might actually win. The next morning the snow came down in curtains, muffling the world. Inside Jake's office the heater clicked and hissed. He stood beside the window, coffee in hand, watching the courthouse across the street. "Today's going to be loud," he said. I tightened my scarf. "Let it be." The new evidence. He turned to me, eyes bright. "Remember the surprise I texted? We found something." He spread photos across the desk, bank statements, emails, copies of checks. Harold's charity fund. Half the donations never reached the shelters he claimed to support. I felt my pulse quicken. Embezzlement. Jake nodded. Exactly. The DA's team got the data this morning. The investigation's expanding. 4 years Harold Whitlock had built his empire on the illusion of generosity. Now the mask was cracking. I whispered, "Karma has good timing." The fall of the Whitlocks. By noon the news had broken. Local judge under investigation for misuse of charity funds. Reporters surrounded the Whitlock mansion. Cameras clicked as Harold pushed through the snow, shouting, "No comment." Evelyn followed behind him, wrapped in fur, makeup streaking from tears. Ryan tried to go to work that morning, but found protesters outside his real estate office. The firm suspended him before lunch. Online, his profile disappeared. By evening, the Whitlocks' once gleaming reputation was ash. When I showed Emily the headline, she stared for a long time. "I never wanted them destroyed," she whispered. I nodded. "But you wanted to be safe. That's what this is." She closed her eyes. "Then maybe it's finally over." The return of fear. But the night had other plans. Near midnight, I woke to the sound of metal scraping outside the apartment window. I crept to the curtain and peered out. A dark figure stood beside the garbage bins, hood pulled low. When I flicked on the porch light, he bolted, leaving behind a glint of chrome. A tire iron. And beside it, an envelope. Inside, a single photograph, Emily and me leaving the courthouse, with a red X across her face. I called Jake immediately. His voice went flat. Don't open the door for anyone. I'm sending a patrol. The fear I'd buried returned like a tide. But beneath it there was steel. They were cornered, desperate. That made them clumsy. The trap. Jake and I met the next morning in the precinct parking lot. We'll bait them, he said. Publicly. Let them think you're alone at the community center tonight. Cameras will be ready. I agreed. It felt dangerous, but I was done running. That evening I unlocked the dark gym, where I'd once taught taekwondo. My old mats still smelled faintly of sweat and pine oil. I left the side door cracked, lights dim. Then I waited. At 10 p.m. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Two shadows slipped inside, tall, hurried. Ryan's voice hissed, "Grab the files. She keeps copies here." I stepped from the darkness. Looking for these. The spotlight snapped on. Cameras whirred. Jake's team emerged from the back room, weapons holstered but ready. Ryan froze, his cousin beside him dropped the crowbar. Jake's voice was calm, almost pitying. Breaking and entering. Tampering with evidence. Not smart, Ryan. They were arrested on the spot. As the officers led him out, Ryan turned to me, hatred and humiliation mixing in his eyes. "You ruined us," he spat. I met his glare. "No, Ryan. You ruined yourself." The trial. Months blurred into hearings, statements, paperwork. Harold's embezzlement charges multiplied. Evelyn faced obstruction for falsifying charity accounts. Ryan pled guilty to attempted break-in to avoid prison time. The once untouchable family name became a cautionary tale whispered in courthouse corridors. When Emily testified, calm, precise, unshakable, the entire room listened. "I stayed silent, because I thought family meant forgiveness," she said. But silence nearly killed me. Her words landed heavier than any verdict. The aftermath. On the spring morning when the final sentencing was read, the air smelled of thawing earth. Harold received 3 years. Evelyn probation. Ryan, community service, and a restraining order that kept him 50 miles away from Emily. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Microphones flashed toward me. "Ms. Rose, do you have anything to say to the Whitlocks?" I looked straight into the camera. "Yes. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Some mothers raise daughters. Others raise warriors." Emily squeezed my hand. "Let's go home." Epilogue, 1 year later. The Boise snow had melted into soft green. The cafe where Linda worked had framed Emily's article, "The Courage to Speak." Donations now funded a shelter for women leaving abusive homes. Emily helped run it, quiet but radiant, her laughter no longer broken. Sometimes she'd catch me staring at her and ask, "What?" I'd smile. Just counting my blessings. One evening, as sunset spilled across the windows, she asked, "Do you ever regret how far you went?" I thought for a long time. "No," I said finally. "Because justice isn't revenge when it saves someone." She nodded, understanding. Then she reached for her coat. "Come on, Mom. Let's walk. It's too nice a night to stay angry." And for the first time since that bitter Christmas Eve, I felt peace. The kind that comes not from victory, but from survival. The spring air carried the smell of rain and new beginnings. I used to think peace meant silence, but silence had nearly killed Emily. Now I knew better. Peace was sound. Laughter in the kitchen. The hum of the kettle. My daughter's voice drifting from the next room, soft but alive. It had been a year since the trial. A full year since that Christmas Eve. And though the city of Boise still held its scars, life, our life, had found rhythm again. Rebuilding. The shelter Emily helped run had grown beyond anything we imagined. It started with one rented house and 5 women. Now it had 2 buildings, a small garden, and a name that made me smile every time I said it: Haven Snowlight. A place where winter couldn't touch you anymore. Emily became its heart. Every day she walked through those doors, offering the same comfort she'd once been denied: blankets, food, quiet listening. Sometimes she cried with them, sometimes she just sat, holding someone's shaking hands. I used to be them, she told me one night as we sorted donated coats. Now I get to show them what surviving looks like. You show them what courage looks like, I said. She smiled, that slow, strong smile I'd prayed I'd see again. Maybe that too. A letter from the past. One afternoon, as I was sweeping the porch of the shelter, a courier arrived with a letter addressed to Rose Whitlock. I froze at the name. My stomach twisted when I saw the handwriting, elegant, deliberate. Evelyn. The letter smelled faintly of lavender perfume. I opened it carefully. Rose. You won. Harold's sick. Ryan's gone. I've lost everything. You can stop now. But know this, you didn't just destroy a family. You destroyed a legacy. I hope you can live with that. I folded the paper and stared out across the parking lot, where Emily was laughing with a new resident, helping her unload boxes. Legacy. I thought. Maybe. But some legacies deserve to end. I slipped the letter into the trash. The visit. 2 weeks later, Jake stopped by the shelter. He still wore the same easy grin, though there were more lines on his face now, battle scars from the bureaucracy. Heard you're officially off their radar, he said, dropping into the old armchair in my office. Finally, I sighed. Feels strange not waking up to threats. He nodded. Harold's out on medical leave, Evelyn's hiding in Oregon, Ryan's moved to Reno. They won't bother you again. Good, I said. Let them learn what it means to live in the cold. Jake smiled faintly. You did something rare, Rose. Most people talk about justice. You actually got it. I leaned back, gazing at the framed photo on my wall, Emily at the shelter's opening ceremony, ribbon in hand, cheeks flushed with pride. Justice isn't about getting even, I said quietly. It's about ending the fear. He looked at me with the same mix of admiration and awe I'd seen that first night in the snow. Still teaching life lessons, huh? I chuckled. Old habits die hard. The winter returns. The next December, snow came early. Boise glittered again under Christmas lights. For the first time in 2 years, Emily wanted to decorate. She bought a tree, small but bright, and insisted we hang ornaments together like we used to. When we finished, she placed one special ornament at the top, a simple silver snowflake with the word hope engraved in its center. Why that one? I asked. She looked up at it, her eyes reflecting the twinkling lights. Because that's what I lost the night you found me, she said softly. And what you gave back. I swallowed the lump in my throat and hugged her. You gave it back to yourself, Emily. I just reminded you it was still there. Closure. That Christmas Eve, we went for a drive outside the city. The world looked clean again, the snow untouched. I parked near the edge of a frozen lake and turned off the engine. Silence wrapped around us, but this time it was gentle, not cruel. Do you ever think about them? Emily asked quietly. Sometimes, I said. Not with anger anymore. Just pity. They had everything, and they chose cruelty. You and I. We chose love. She smiled faintly. Then we won. We sat there for a while, watching the wind swirl across the ice. Then she leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for coming back that night." I looked at her, my throat tightening. "You're my daughter, Emily. I'd walk through any storm to find you." 1 year later, epilogue. A letter arrived from the district attorney's office. The Whitlock case was officially closed. Harold had passed away quietly, Evelyn never returned to Idaho, and Ryan, last anyone heard, was working construction in Nevada under a different name. But I didn't feel triumph. Only peace. That evening, Emily and I stood outside the shelter, as the first snow of the season began to fall. The lamplight made the flakes glow like tiny stars. She reached out her hand and caught one. "Cold," she said with a laugh. I smiled. "Not anymore." Inside, the women at the shelter were singing carols, off-key, but full of warmth. Someone handed me a mug of cocoa. I looked around at the faces, strong, bruised, healing. Each one a story that hadn't ended in silence. And I realized something. The real victory wasn't in bringing the Whitlocks down. It was in lifting Emily, and every woman like her, back up. When the music faded and the night grew still, Emily turned to me. "Mom," she said, "if someone told you, back then, that all this would happen, would you still have done it?" I thought about the snow, the hospital lights, the trembling girl on the porch. "Yes," I whispered. "Every single thing." Because sometimes the only way to save a life is to kick the door open. We stood together under the falling snow, mother and daughter, two survivors who'd turned pain into purpose. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of winter anymore.